So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. A first word of thanks. Thanks for the Archmarathon organizing and this opportunity of being here. It's already an honor to be here and to participate in such an event with so inspiring projects. My name is Luís Ribeiro, and together with my partners, which names are Teresa Barão and Catarina Viana, we run our landscape office, TOPIARIS, which is settled in Lisbon. When approaching the design of the landscape, we do believe that to give form or to alter the form of a landscape, we have to understand the systems. It's definitely a question of form and function, but it's also a question of the systems that rely and support that form and that function. So for that, it's very important to understand the ecological systems, the physical systems such as the hydrology, and of course the social systems. And besides that, we have many times to understand these systems behind the borders of the project, because many of them depend on areas that are outside of the border. And that's what we really try to do with this example, with the TAGUS Linear Park, the project that we designed for the Lisbon north part of Lisbon metropolitan area. So the first thing was the challenge, and the challenge was to deal with the contemporary landscape. So what is a contemporary landscape? Of course, all landscapes are historical, but the complex metropolitan land mosaic that we found there with urban, suburban, industrial, abandoned and working, military, agriculture, natural and derelicted lands, it's all a complex and difficult system, most of it private or with no public access, that deprived access public to the river, to the riverside landscape. So the challenge was to change this into a more democratic landscape. The region, so we have to go behind these spaces, these borders. The region is we start with the Iberian Peninsula, where Portugal and the Tagus River Valley are. And to be more close, we are in the west part of the Iberian Peninsula. In the middle of the country is Lisbon, and inside of that there is the Tagus Linear Park. So in this map we can see the Tagus River coming from Spain, the biggest river in the Iberian Peninsula, and it reaches the estuary, which is a huge lake, before it reaches the sea. So the park is right there in that part when it reaches the estuary. So this is the upstream of the Tagus River Valley, one of the most fertile lands in Portugal, and this is a middle stream in the area of Portugal. You can see the fertile agricultural areas, and finally the area where we designed the park, where the river reaches the estuary, which is with this flat, huge landscape with all of these complex land uses that I will show it a bit more. So here we see a map of Lisbon metropolitan area, the river, the Lisbon and the city where the park is, the district, the floodplain of the valley, and the northern hills that control and limited the urban sprawl of Lisbon metropolitan area, and then the urban expansion of Lisbon. And the park is really in the middle of these interchanging land uses. So the site, let's go looking closer to the site. So the site it's really composed of all of these complex areas, and many times with abandoned places and other workings and industrial, and with these kind of problems with the relationship and connection. And many times we forget that these places have so much to tell, has a large story. Tagus has been sung by writers and poets since the classical times, Muslim times, and contemporary writers and poets. So, and it's attached to the area is attached to the waterfront, and it has the possibility of linking 3 different metropolitan regions. This is the aerial view of the site, where we can see the urban areas, the farmland, together with natural marshlands, military airport, industrial, abandoned and not abandoned, and the infrastructure corridor that disconnects all of the riverscape from the communities. So it is here that the TAGUS Linear Park is situated with an area of 15 hectares and a system of trails of 6 kilometers. This is some images of this area in winter completely flooded, and also areas where the metropolitan rusted remains are, and or such as this one where a sand deposit, an old sand deposit is here, and you can see that this private landscape was detached from the I'm sorry, the previous one, detached from the metropolitan area that you can see in the background from the riverside. And this was really the challenge, how to make it more sociable, how to bring people here. But besides this abandoned, we can still see people that were using these, the fishermen, that were using these abandoned landscapes for recreations. They were fishing near the river within all of these remains, kind of random and displaced and rusted structures, and with their shelters where they put the things they need for fishing, together with all of this kind of scenery. I don't say this is bad or not. I'm just saying this, that's the entity it has, and we have to transform this for the social and for the population. So this is an old pier where the old ships pull off in terms of this, loading and unloading large amounts of sand for construction. So the vision we got and the concept for this area is a contemporary park because it's really based upon the existing structures. We didn't want to refuse the existing landscape, this complex landscape. We didn't want to have a curative or healing attitude. We had to work with all that existed in the land, aiming to the people's enjoyment and aesthetic pleasures. Of course, working with a low budget. And I wouldn't say it's a problem. It's what it is. That's what we have to work with. So the vision and the project, it was a system of trails crossing all of these mosaic of lands and converging to a central area, which is the fisherman area. We call Fisherman Beach. We call that because it was a sand deposit, and there's the place where the fishermen remain even when it was abandoned. For each of the trail and corridor, we have to define a different strategy. So in landscape design, if we want to reach form, it's not working. If we want to reach form, we have to end form and, of course, function. We have to deal with systems. Without understanding the systems, we cannot change or interact with form or function. So each place has their own specificities, and these are some cross-sections of that. And here is a plan of the Fisherman Beach, where all the trails converge. We have more trees in the background. We have more herbaceous, low and natural ecosystems like dune systems and marshland, wetlands near the river, but we preserve what existed as piers. So we envision this place, which is seen like that, in something that is very serene, where people can enjoy the wideness of this landscape, to reflect about its history, but offer a lot of diversity of activities of recreation. So that's how we saw the place. Now, how we design it. We really connected through what was becoming a public area and for the construction of the park. And the public area, which is by law, it's mandatory to have along streamlines. And so through this diverse mosaic, we really design a landscape, a park landscape, which merges into the surrounding landscape. We never use the word buffered or enclosed or direct views to or whatsoever. We just let the park and all of its boundaries interact with the land. So these are some views of the park. And also these next views shows how the systems work in terms of natural vegetation. The park after being built and now 1 year and 2 years. After being built, 1 year and 2 years after. So we also, to last the park, we have to use the wise use of resources. And so I'm running out of time, but we use all that land has to offer, and we use the native vegetations. It's not working, yes. Here you can see that irrigated area for a vegetation is just 1/5 of the park, so it's very, very low. But it's a lot of sand. But why? Because we are using sensitive landscape vegetation, we have to use these barriers that work, has land art features, but also enable for the native vegetation to evolve from these to these. So in 1 year and 2 years, we provide vegetation for people to walk through it, having the sense of being in the middle of natural areas of vegetation, and actually the consumption of resources is really low to maintain it. I ask you to go a bit further. So we really use the natural process in favor of the design and for the function. Designing also with recycling. We recycle everything we could find in that place. The piers, bringing people near to the water. Please, faster. And the other pier. And so people can enjoy the landscape. We also recycle the cheap containers with our architects into the interpretation center and the bar terraces. So we think that we were able to recycle everything. The industrial remains became historical art features. The restoration of the dikes provide an incredible trail in wood, which became a feature, leading to a birds observatory, which also is made of pallets, recycling pallets. So even the playgrounds, we use that. But of course, most of all, the community involvement. The fishermen remain there, and as well as the pilgrimage, people that pass through these areas. And so we're now providing space for recreation for a community that for decades were living nearby such a beautiful and such a large and inspiring landscape, and were deprived of that. And because it's very difficult to understand the sense of place, I just would like to present a 2 minutes movie, and that will show a bit best the linkage and how these work. So if you can please make the movie. This was the old dike. On the left, the agriculture, on the right, the natural areas. The recycled cheap containers and the functional paths, avoiding to trample on the native vegetation, which is very sensitive. In the background, the industry areas, the urban areas, and we can see the behavior pattern of population. There's no buffering of industry or whatsoever. You really want to make people feel the river, this old river, in a contemporary mood. Small areas for irrigation, which makes the park very sustainable and viable. The more dense activities are in the background, the playing people on the front is temporary events. So with this, we think that we could transmit that inherited territory into the future, but through a contemporary approach. It's okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.